Thanks for coming along this evening. This is quite a departure for Wimbledon Community Association. We had a discussion back in March sometime when we thought, well, the election's coming up in autumn, let's do some hustings, you know. And part of the reason we want to do, we obviously believe in democracy, that's why we want to. We've got every single candidate invited here today. But we also wanted to draw some attention to us and the fantastic work we've been doing, so there's an ulterior motive there as well. So yes, we're a local charity which has been running since 1946. Used to be based at the community centre until just over 10 years ago now. And my colleague Jackie Chapman, who's around outside I think, and I have been running the charity now for about 12 years since the community centre closed. So we thought it was a good opportunity to connect back with people. Some of you will know us, some of you won't know us. I'm the chair of trustees, Jackie is secretary and also a trustee, and we have another trustee here, Kirsty Warwick, you've seen around, and lots of other willing volunteers who I really appreciate their time tonight to help out, as well as people from Sustainable Merton and Diana. Anyway, you don't really want to hear from me. We are very grateful to Diana for stepping in to be facilitator. She's done this several times before, I think, I understand, and I saw her in action at the Chamber of Commerce many times, and now she's obviously the Chief Executive at Sustainable Merton, and I think she'll be a very good facilitator. She'll explain a little bit more about what the arrangements are this evening. A lot of you have registered, and you will have registered some questions. There were a lot of questions. We had to work around different themes, so some of the questions won't be exactly the ones you wanted, but we'll hopefully cover a lot of the areas that you put down on your question sheet. And do enjoy the evening.
I've worked in Merton for over 20 years and have been the CEO of the local environmental charity Sustainable Merton for the past 7 years. And I'm very happy to see that I have a number of my team in the audience and some of our trustees and a good number of our followers, so that's lovely. I'm really pleased to chair this debate this evening. We have 8 candidates here this evening. Unfortunately, Aaron Maffey from the Workers' Party has had to withdraw because of family bereavement, but we will hear a statement from him in the opening session. And I hope we're in for a stimulating session. We're sold out, as I'm sure some of you have heard, yeah, obviously very popular. And I think part of the reason for this is that with Stephen Hammond MP stepping down after a long period of office, this general election will result in a new MP for Wimbledon. And I'm sure all of you are interested in hearing from our candidates on how they will represent this constituency and what national and local policies they will be fighting for. With so many on our panel, we are going to have to be quite disciplined in managing our time so that we have the opportunity to hear a range of questions and that every panel member will be given the opportunity to answer each question. Now, overall, we've had 70 questions. So we've categorised them into themes. Those are around health, sustainability, local and general issues, the economy, education, and foreign policy. And we've selected one question from each theme, and I will do my best to get us through those questions. It's quite tight, but I'll do my best. So we'll be asking each candidate to take just 1 minute only to answer the questions, and we will be timing you candidates. Okay, and then at the end we'll have time for each of the candidates to also give a 1 minute closing statement. And we're not having a break, so we'll just run straight through. So the other thing importantly to say, because I think a number of you have asked this, is I won't be coming to the audience for the person to answer the question that has been selected. That's really about time saving, okay? Because obviously with a roving mic, that's going to take up valuable time. So first of all, I'm going to introduce our candidates one by one in an order drawn from a hat, and give each of them 2 minutes max to introduce themselves and set out why they want to be MP for Wimbledon. Now, the order of the hat is the running order down the table, so the first question is easy. So here we go. So please welcome our first candidate, the independent Sarah Barber. Welcome.
Good evening, my name is Sarah Barber. I'm a small business owner and have lived in London my entire life. I have always enjoyed London and the diversity and excitement that living in the city brings. But despite all our equality and inclusivity, there is something going on that all major parties fail to address. Hidden behind euphemistic terms and closed doors, the most innocent in our society are being killed on an incomprehensible scale. In England and Wales alone, 250,000 babies are killed by abortion per year. 10 million babies since 1967, the equivalent of the entire population of London. Abortion increased by a further 17% last year, but none of the major political parties have set out any plans to address this grave injustice. Some have even formed plans to make it worse by pushing for abortion up to birth for any reason. Until we start protecting babies in the womb, our country has no future. I am committed to doing what major parties have failed to do. I will stand up for the voiceless and protect the sanctity of life. My vision is threefold. Firstly, protect babies' rights to life under law. Repeal the 1967 Abortion Act. We must protect unborn babies as we would protect any other people group. Secondly, support women in challenging pregnancies through redirecting funds, removing taxpayer funds from abortion and redirecting it to offer real support for women and families. Seek reparations for women harmed by the abortion industry. Many women deceived by the abortion industry are left with physical, emotional, spiritual and psychological damage after aborting their child, often without informed consent. They ought to have our support and commitment to their healing, and they deserve to be heard. This will not be easy, but with God, all things are possible. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll now pass over to Danielle Dunfield-Prayero, yes, from the Conservatives.
Good evening, everyone. Hello, hello. Thank you for a wonderful welcome. I'm Danielle, and I'm the Conservative Party candidate for Wimbledon and the Maldons. I have a background in business that stretches back 30 years. I've represented Great Britain in 2 World Championships for triathlon, and my proudest moment as being the mother of 3 boys who I've raised with my husband, Gordon. Like many people in Wimbledon, I have worked and lived abroad. I was born in New York, I grew up in Holland, I raised my family in Australia, Canada, Singapore, England, and most importantly, here in Wimbledon. I've lived many lives in these whirling campaigns, but I have had 2 constants. Firstly, it's Wimbledon. It's where Gordon, my husband, was born and grew up. It's where all my relatives reside and where I now live. My second constant is love of environment. As I mentioned, I grew up in Holland. My school was 5 metres below sea level, with nothing but sand dunes and the local ecosystem to keep the ocean at bay. I know firsthand how essential preservation of landscape is. And here in Wimbledon, our green spaces are so precious. The common, the parklands of Wimbledon Park, our green spaces, our pocket parks, these must be protected. I'm standing to be your Member of Parliament because I'm passionate about Wimbledon. I believe I can bring a huge variety of world and life experiences to bear to the post, and I will strive to bring, with your help, the high standards of integrity that this public office deserves.
Please welcome Eleanor Stringer for the Labour Party.
Thanks, Anne, and thank you everybody for coming here. It's lovely to see some faces that I recognise in the room. So over the course of this campaign, I've spoken to thousands of people in Wimbledon who are fed up with the Conservative chaos and they want change. They are fed up with the cost of living crisis making it harder to make ends meet. Fed up with having to wait to be treated in a crumbling NHS. And they're really fed up with seeing the opportunities for their children disappear. The Conservatives spent the past 15 years cutting public services to the bone, and and then they crash the economy to top it all up. The country is ready to show Rishi Sunak the door and to give Labour a chance. Labour has a plan to secure economic stability, rebuild our NHS, and give children in Wimbledon the very best start in life. I want to be a part of delivering that plan for Wimbledon because I love this place. Wimbledon is my home. It's where I grew up, it's where I'm raising my family. I've spent years here as a charity leader, local councillor, working hard alongside our community to deliver for Wimbledon to help families who are really struggling. I'm proud of my record, but I know there's so much more that I can do with your help as your Member of Parliament. I can only do that if I'm elected on the 4th of July. So much has changed since 2019. Recent polls show that this is a three-way marginal and support for Labour is on the rise. Labour's the only party that has ever won Wimbledon from the Conservatives before, and we can and we will do this again. So if you put your trust in me, I promise that I'll be working hard for Wimbledon every single day. If you want a local champion who can be your voice in government rather than shouting from the sidelines, then choose change. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. And then for the Liberal Democrats, Paul Kohler.
I'm not a career politician. 10 years ago, I was the head of the School of Law at SOAS. I was attacked in my home by 4 thugs. My life was saved by 2 brave police officers from Wimbledon Police Station. My attackers happened to be Polish. It was 2014, 2 years before Brexit, and my story was used by the right wing to push an anti-immigrant, anti-Polish, anti-EU agenda. The Brexit campaign used my story to promote their anti-EU agenda. I was then shocked to hear the Mayor of London decide to close the police station from whence my saviours had come. I was angry about Brexit, I was worried about the police station, I took him to court and stopped him closing the police station. My wife said, stop shouting at the TV, go out and do something. And one of my daughters said to me, Dad, why don't you join the Liberal Democrats? Why the Liberal Democrats? Because their values of individuality, of community, of nation states, of internationalism were my values. They're Wimbledon's values. And that's why I want to be your MP, to fight for you, your values in our areas. I want to fight for you who are appalled at what the Tories have done to our NHS, what they've done to our rivers and streams, to our climate change pledges, to community policing, to our shattered economy and our broken politics. You know I'll fight for you, not just during elections. I've been fighting before I became a councillor for you. I stopped the closure of Wimbledon Police Station. I stopped the Eastway Dementia Centre being closed. I'm fighting now to force the council to enforce the covenants on Wimbledon Park. That's why I want you to be your MP. Thank you.
All faiths and non. It believes in the traditional family and its values. The party believes in the God-given traditional freedoms of expression, association, movement, work, religion and bodily autonomy. The Heritage Party condemns lockdowns, forced vaccinations, abortion and euthanasia. It also cherishes the Christian concept of love thy neighbour, domestically so that mass immigration must end tomorrow. Mass immigration disturbs the peace of Britain by atomising British society. Then abroad, the Heritage Party would help to negotiate an end to the incipient nuclear war in the Ukraine and the Zionist genocide of the Palestinians in Gaza. The Heritage Party believes in introducing peace and harmony into all the nation's endeavours. So, ladies and gentlemen, please consider giving your vote to the Heritage Party. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, next please welcome for the Green Party, Rachel Brooks.
My name is Rachel Brooks. I was born in St George's, I grew up in Wimbledon, and now I live in Merton Park. I mean it when I say I'm buzzing to be here tonight. So thank you to the organisers and thank you to all of you for attending. I did not take the decision to stand as the Green Party's candidate lightly, because I have a young daughter, and it's hard enough already to juggle work, childcare, running a charity, and be up every night to deal with relentless screams of a teething toddler. So mine was there. But truthfully, it's because of her that I'm here today. Naturally, I have one eye on her future. I want her to grow up with at least the same opportunities that I had, that my parents had. I want her to know beavers, beetles, woodpeckers, different types of bees. I want her to live through peace times, to have a comfortable, sturdy home, to eat well, to live well, to love who she pleases, to have a stab at happiness. But knowing what I know about the threat posed by the climate and nature emergency, I am genuinely concerned that she won't have any of those things. And that blows my mind. It's unforgivable. I have spent many years working with actual solutions to climate change, so I know they exist. In my day job, I design and deliver high-impact community projects around the world that increase well-being and contribute to climate change mitigation. So I literally know there are so many more solutions than are currently being talked about. Why? Because we don't have the right diversity of voices at the decision-making table. So that's why I'm here today. To offer solutions to difficult problems like climate change that are not about disruption or personal sacrifice, but the opportunity to live better. To show how keeping nature at the heart of decision-making is in the interests of everyone, because climate injustice is social injustice. To implore everyone in this room, especially my honourable companions here on the stage tonight, that as parents, uncles, aunts, grandparents, leaders, it is our duty to uphold the well-being of future generations in what we do today, and to give you the confidence to vote Green on July the 4th. Thank you.
Okay, an independent standing, and that is Amy Lynch. Please welcome.
Hello everybody, my name is Amy Lynch, and as you probably hear from my accent, I'm from Dublin, Ireland. I moved to London 14 years ago now when I was 22. I was only coming for 6 months, and then London glassed me and kept me here. I'm a single mother of a lovely, beautiful 6-year-old mixed-race boy, and I'm standing because last minute I decided in the last election that I voted, I didn't want to vote for any of the parties. I don't believe anything that they say, I don't trust anything that they say, and as a mother, I want to make sure that my son's future in all aspects of life are safe, and he has a peaceful, very peaceful future ahead of him, even when I have left this earth. I'm very much pro-Palestine. I have supported them from a very young age as a Celtic football fan, and I want this country to stop spending our taxpayers' money on stuff like weapons and funding Israel, and all the big corporate companies that are also funding them. I want to have a say. My background is not in politics. I've always had an interest in politics though. My background is in law. I work for a global US law firm in the city, and I just want to be the voice of the people and bring everybody together.
And next we have for the Reform Party, Ben Cronin.
Lovely. Well, first, thank you all very much for turning up and listening to us. It's an absolute pleasure to be here and hear other people's points of view as well as put forward my own. Now, I may not look like a politician because I'm not. I mean, I'm a development manager doing software, and the reason why I decided to stand for reform is my children. I've got 4 children, my oldest is 24, and I realised she's never going to be able to afford to buy a house. If you've got children, and nieces and nephews, the same holds true for them. And I found out I was going to be a dad when I was 24. I get my act together and I bought a house in West Dulwich for £89,000. That same house last year now costs £650,000. What happened over those past 25, 30 years? And the answer is poorly managed immigration. It's not the immigrants that cause the problem, it's the lack of government policies that mean that we don't have enough houses, that we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the services that can support people coming into this wonderful country and sharing in the profitability and the economy that we have here. So, the reason why I'm standing is that there needs to be a change, and the policies we're seeing in the main parties are not providing that. And the reason I'm standing for reform is that I believe that the policies we have are going to make things better and fairer for people in this wonderful country. Thank you.
Ben, now we're just getting the mic back, so it's not that easy for us. But we are going to the first question now, so thank you candidates for your opening statements. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn to each of the panel members and ask them to reply in no more than 1 minute, which I know is incredibly difficult. Oh, I have forgotten something. I do apologise. That's with the fiasco around the mic. So I did mention before that Aaron can't be here for a family bereavement, so he has a friend called Dominic who is going to stand here and read his statement. Come on up, Dominic. Apologies.
I'll just take my glasses off so I can read this. I'm reading this on behalf of Aaron, who's a good friend of mine and not a member of the party. I'm very proud and happy to read this out because his humanity shines out for me. Dear all, I am deeply sorry that I cannot attend tonight's hustings. Thank you to everyone who has made the effort to be here. Unfortunately, due to the tragic loss of a loved one, I am unable to join you in person. Over the past 40 years, relentless cuts to public services have led to untimely losses that affect us all. The degradation of mental health services and cuts across the board have contributed to a heartbreaking rise in suicides and cancer deaths, even within our borough. This is a collective failure we must address. All three main political parties have contributed to the current state of our nation. Many of you here have children, grandchildren, or nieces and nephews who, like my family, struggle with high living costs. It is increasingly difficult for people to afford housing and meet basic needs, which are fundamental human rights. Meanwhile, food banks are proliferating as millions fall below the poverty line, while the wealthy continue to accumulate more. We are often told to blame those on benefits or refugees seeking a better life. This narrative distracts us from the real issues and those who profit from our struggles. While facing these challenges, we spend £15,000 per minute on foreign aid to countries like Ukraine and Israel, and on outdated nuclear submarines. This expenditure comes at the expense of our citizens who lack access to essential services. Let's have a look at Israel, for an example. Why do we fund these causes while neglecting our own? Over 25% of our politicians receive funding from Israeli lobbies, leading to a lack of accountability and a blind eye to genocide. Significant support from these lobbies result in silence on critical issues like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We must ask, do our politicians dismiss the killing of civilians in Palestine because they are not UK citizens? If Hamas took an Israeli hostage in a UK hospital, would Israel have the right to bomb the hospital, killing everyone inside? Would our politicians dismiss it as an act against human shields? Or would there be an outcry because the victims were British? This hypocrisy must be addressed. Changing our foreign policy is essential not only to stop conflicts abroad, but also to prevent people from fleeing war zones. By reducing our involvement in wars and redirecting resources to support peace and stability, we can help ensure that fewer people are forced to leave their homes in search of safety. If we change our foreign policy, we could rebuild our country and invest in the future of our communities. The constant investment in arms perpetuates conflict and suffering, affecting the people, not the politicians who profit from it. Long live Palestine, long live Gaza, and these are my words, not Aaron. Free, free. Thank you, candidates, thank you.
Thank you, Dominic. So that did run over 2 minutes, but I've let that air time because obviously Aaron isn't here to answer any of the other questions. So, right, let's go to the first question, as I was saying, and I will turn to each of the panel members and ask that they take no more than 1 minute to reply. You can see that we are timing this. Now I'm going to mix the order of the responses up so that the same person doesn't go last or first every time. Now, because of the mic, I'm going to shout to the panel and you pass the mic, otherwise we'll be doing this toing and froing all evening. So I think that should work. So let's go to the first question. This question is very topical, current and local. It also had the most questions submitted. So I imagine the audience can anticipate what is coming. So here's the question to our candidates. If elected to represent Wimbledon, what steps would you take to protect local green spaces with special reference to Wimbledon Park, where the All England Lawn Tennis Club plans to build a massive new stadium, 38 more tennis courts, 10 additional buildings and 6 miles of connecting roads? Okay, and I'm going to Rachel first for that. Lucky Rachel, here you are.
Okay, the simple answer from the Green Party is that we propose a right for nature bill which actually enshrines in law legal protection for our green spaces, which is absolutely imperative at a time like this because our green spaces are required for our well-being, our health, they clean our air, they sequester carbon. You know, this is my job, I can tell you the numbers. And not only that, but they foster a sort of environmentalism in our communities, which is what is actually needed to get everybody out there also advocating to protect our green spaces. Regarding Wimbledon, it will come as no surprise to you that we vehemently oppose the plans and stand in absolute solidarity with the Save Wimbledon Park campaign. I think it sets a dangerous precedent and it cannot be allowed to go ahead.
The plan to develop Wimbledon Park is terrible, and the Heritage Party would support all legal means to prevent it happening. That's all we need to say.
Thank you. Eleanor for the Labour Party.
Thank you. So the question was initially more generally about green spaces. As I said, I grew up here, I'm the deputy leader of the council. One of the things I love about this area and I'm so proud of are our parks and green spaces. As a council, we do everything we can without increasingly diminishing budgets to keep them as amazing as they can, working with many friends of parks groups, some of whom I see in the room. The ex-golf course, which the All England Club have this proposal on, is a very complicated proposal, and residents deserve that it's treated with care and detailed understanding. And I've been really shocked by some of the misunderstandings that I've heard on the doorstep that people have picked up from campaign. I had somebody the other day outraged that the athletic stadium in the park was going to be built on. So that's simply not true. And somebody else thought that it was going to go into the parkland. That's not true. What is true is that there are covenants covering that golf course land, and at the moment they are in place, and I want those to be respected. The All England Club have been clear that they're not going to start the discussions about the covenants until the planning application has concluded. I think there are several stages of that still to happen. It's still with the Deputy Mayor of London. It will likely then be challenged by the Secretary of State. What I'll be fighting for are cast iron commitments that the owners of that land, if they do develop it or any other proposal, that there are benefits for generations to come and that they work with the community, with us, to ensure that we get that park, the new additional parkland, to be something that our children and our children's children can use in the future.
Thank you, Eleanor.
Thank you very much. Obviously, I completely reject the proposal from Altec. The covenant was put in place that says very clearly that you have not built on the lands, and you can't go changing it because a couple of years have gone by and you think you can get away with it. This goes on to a broader policy, which is we should protect the green spaces of this country. At the moment, you know, to maintain the level of immigration that we have, we need to be building a house every 2 minutes, and that land has to be built on somewhere. And quite frankly, you know, I like the countryside and I don't want it torment over. So, you know, immigration does have a long-term influence on things such as green spaces, which you have to understand, accept and account for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now it is Amy from the Independent.
Well, funnily enough, as an immigrant myself, I came to London 14 years ago. I've spent every penny of my wages, tax and national insurance, my groceries, my cars, everything else I spend goes into this country. So I actually live in an apartment just in Abbey Mills, on the borders of Collier's Wood and Wimbledon. I can't actually afford to live in Wimbledon, even though I have an SW19 postcode. My son goes to school in South Wimbledon. All my friends are around here, and I definitely oppose Altec on legal grounds, but as we know, a lot of the time the government and big companies do not listen to legal things that they have in place, and they completely ignore them, which is totally wrong. That is my background, and I think we should stand by the covenants that are there. I want my son personally, he's been in Phil Walker's school, Wimbledon FC, and has played for the last 5 years. He's a budding little footballer, along with all the other children that are there, and they need green spaces. I don't have a house with a garden anymore. The park is where I meet my friends and mums, and we need it for playgrounds and everything else, and for the wildlife. So.
Thank you. Thank you.
Local green spaces are the lungs of any city. The Lib Dems and all of the Greens are supporters of the Nature and Climate Bill because we must have a grown-up, sorted out way of dealing with climate change. With regards to the All England Club, they must not be allowed to build on what is metropolitan open land. When they bought the freehold in '93, they gave solemn undertaking, as did the Labour Council, they would never be building on it, and the covenants they entered into, the legal promises, are watertight. The Labour Council, Eleanor as deputy, keeps saying they will respect the covenants. That has no legal meaning. We must enforce the covenants and stop the LTC building on the land. Only the council has that right as owner of the covenant, but the council can do it if it wants to. It's twice they have voted against our motions to do so. That's simply not good enough.
I have not got a policy on this, but as your MP, it would be my job to represent the people, so I would want to listen to what you want.
The green spaces of Wimbledon define our area in a unique and precious way. As an environmentalist, I understand the importance of biodiversity, and once it's gone, it's gone. It can't be replaced. It's something we absolutely have to protect. As an athlete, I think our green spaces are incredibly important for sport, mental health, healthy lifestyles, and prospects for our children. And as a local champion, I reject the Altec plan in its current form. It is excessive, and it is not with the support and the will of the local residents.
Shall we do a straw poll? So let's go to the audience, having heard what you've just heard, and whether it's changed your mind or not. How many of you are in favour of the development? Anyone? A few? Okay, and how many against? Many more, and how many still haven't made your mind up? There, okay, wow. That's interesting for the candidates to see. Thank you for that. Okay, we now move on to the topic of health. We had 6 questions submitted for this, and the question to the panel is, what local issues will be most important for you in addressing the continuous crisis in the NHS and adult social care? And I'm going to turn to Ben from the Reform Party first. Thank you.
So we all agree that the NHS is in crisis, and it's taken about 20 years to get to the state where it is, so there's no short-term easy solution. And some things we can do is making sure we're spending money in the best way possible. At the moment, the NHS spends £66 million on translation services, something which could provide 1,790 standard grade nurses. Money is not being spent well within the NHS. One of the things Reform stands for is tax cuts for frontline workers, offsetting student loans, and also improving training. One of the things is removing requirements to have nurses that need to have a university degree. These kind of removal of restrictions will make it easy to get more people into the NHS to provide quality service that we all deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm representing the party that founded the NHS, and it's absolutely horrifying to see the state it's in at the moment. So in terms of my local priorities, it's the ones that people are talking to me about on the doorstep day in, day out. The fact that people cannot get appointments, the waiting list being nearly 8 million is a huge issue, and our top priority, if they ever get in, is tackling that backlog. So if people are ill and they're not being seen, they're getting iller. That then ends up costing the NHS more money. If those people have jobs or caring responsibilities, they can't do those. The knock-on impact of those waiting lists is absolutely humongous. When Labour got in last time in 1997, we tackled the waiting lists. We're going to do it again. We're going to end tax avoidance to bring in extra money, to get additional evening and weekend appointments to get some of those treatments going. And then we need to have a big grown-up conversation about the future of the health service, the future of adult social care, and I'm really glad that was mentioned in the question, because you can't talk about one without the other. We've got an ageing population. We all want the best for ourselves, for our parents, when they need care later in life. We've got to look at how we're going to fund that. If we get a strong Labour government, we can have that long-term conversation about making sure that we can get the best health and social care. Sorry,
Thank you, Eleanor.
Talk about this all day.
That's lovely. Thank you. Okay, along to Michael, please.
Well, the NHS needs more funding, but the money that's in the NHS at the moment is being badly spent. We need to spend more money though on adult social care, because it's a very pressing problem. We need to make the money available for it by stop spending on wars, on immigration subsidies for people coming into the country, but mainly wars. If we made savings in the right places, we can fund the NHS properly. Thank you.
So the Green Party has a comprehensive package of plans for proper funding of the NHS, which will of course have impacts locally and nationally. It's to the tune of 30 billion by the end of the Parliament, alongside 20 billion of social care, introducing a national social care service, which is free at the point of use. So this is a sort of joined up policy. The thing we're sort of building up to here is that prevention is better than a cure. So if we can kind of get people where they're supposed to be, whether that's leaving the hospital and back in their homes under a care plan, or whether that's tackling the sort of endemic health crises we have in this country caused by things like air pollution, diabetes. I mean, mental health itself is a huge cost to the economy and lost work days. So our policies to do with sort of something really local, kind of active travel, promoting active travel and green spaces. Quite a lot of urban greening is what I would like to see that you would actually notice on a daily basis. And I think it's really hard to cost what the positive impacts of these sorts of things are, because we would see fewer patients actually in the NHS, and we would see sort of genuine kind of improvements in GDP and productivity. This is the sort of a pitch from the Green Party. Thank you.
When the NHS was set up in 1948, it was designed to deliver episodic care to people for short-term issues. Now we're living longer, there's increased obesity, and there are more treatments. And also with the obesity and the long-term healthcare, we have a longer living. People are suffering from complex conditions. This is putting an enormous strain on the NHS. Money alone is not going to solve the problem. The NHS funding has been increased by a third in real terms since 2010. We've also, since 2010, had almost 46,000 more doctors and 75,000 more nurses. And for the first time ever, we have a long-term work plan. The state of the NHS is a huge challenge for the country with no easy fixes. However, there is a plan in place to increase the number of staff. We also have the pharmacies, devolving services to pharmacies to take pressure off our GPs will help. And also with being doctor-led, creating these clusters of hospital excellence so that we have better outcomes and outstanding treatments for our patients.
Thank you.
Yes, agreed, the NHS is in a mess. And did you know that since COVID, DIY abortions have been made legal so that women can have abortions at home? This brings DIY abortions into the home, and 1 in 17 of these women require hospital treatment as a result. Add to this the ambulance call-outs to get these women to safety and to the long-term health implications that abortion brings, including depression, breast cancer, increased complications in future pregnancies, and you can see that abolishing abortion would actually help save your NHS. Locally, we kill 844 babies a year.
Yeah, the NHS is a mess. You have to start at the root cause of all problems. So we need to ask ourselves, why is it a mess? Is it because our nurses and doctors are overworked and overstretched? Are they not paid properly? I received amazing service when I had my son. He was a 3-week early baby and he had to get neonatal care. One of my friends is a neonatal nurse and she works tirelessly with no help or extra funding. She struggles. I know consultants that are thinking of moving into the private sector because obviously the wages are more money. My son cannot get a dentist appointment, along with a lot of our children cannot get dentist appointments. There's not enough dentists coming through the system. They need to be educated from school and told about the public service jobs that are coming through and give them an option to stay and give them something that they want to work for. I have suffered mental health myself. I had postnatal depression, I had a breakdown, and I went through the mental health service here, which is an amazing service with not enough funding.
Thank you.
local people tell me they're having real difficulties seeing a GP. The Lib Dems will give everyone a legal right to see a GP within 7 days and in an emergency within 24 hours. We'll do that with a costed plan to employ and retain 8,000 new GPs, extra GPs. That will begin to deal with the front door, but we also need to deal with the back door of the NHS. Do you know that on average, every week, there are 13,500 beds blocked by people in hospital who shouldn't be there anymore? Why? Because they can't get home social care. The Lib Dems have a costed plan to give everyone free home personal care, not in residential, but in home. That will free up the hospital beds. That will begin to deal with the waiting list, because suddenly you have a throughput of people, and expensive hospital beds will be used for people who need treatment. And what I'd say to Danielle is, you speak as if you haven't been in charge. These problems, these waiting lists have arisen on your watch. It's no good now waking up and thinking, I've got an answer.
Question. So we're now moving on to the theme of local and general questions, and there were 20 questions on local issues and 11 on general issues, and so I'm going to ask 2 questions under this theme. So the first one is, what would you do if elected to make it safer and more appealing for people to travel via active means? And for example, here we're including improving cycling, walking infrastructure, low traffic neighbourhoods, school streets, dangerous junctions, and of all the volume of motor vehicles, including HGVs. So a lot there. And I'm going to come to Paul first on that, which is why I'm standing here. Here you go, Paul.
We must improve our cycleways. The Lib Dems on Merton Council have pushed the council a number of times on cycleways. We're always told a cycle strategy is coming tomorrow. School streets, clearly they play an important role, as do low traffic neighbourhoods, but they must be with the consent of the community. We need an evidence-based approach. Are they working, and are they working for the community? We need to work with the community, not impose them on people. The Lib Dems were at the forefront of the 20-mile-per-hour speed limit. I know it's difficult, but it's so important from a safety perspective. So we must maintain the 20-mile speed limit on residential roads. Not on major roads, but on residential roads. These are the things we will do to make active travel more important within Merton.
Hello there. I grew up in Holland, as I said before, and it's a fantastic infrastructure for cycling. Children can have a long way independence, and obviously it's great for the environment. And actually, I celebrate the amount of times I've seen you on your bike going up the hill. So congratulations. We should all be doing a lot more of that. I'll race you. How's that? I'm not in favour of these 20, 30, 20-mile zones, which are catching lots of people out, and I think a lot of local people feel like it's a cash cow for the council. And absolutely, we need to get more people on public transport, so more frequent buses, particularly night services.
Thank you,
Well, the Heritage Party would reintroduce a minimum 30-mile-an-hour limit. 20 mile an hour is mind control, not speed control. It's there to make zombies of drivers. There are far too many cycle lanes already, and we would...
Oh, that's rubbish.
Yes, well, we'd get rid of a lot of them. And there are plenty of school streets, low traffic neighbourhoods. They're a menace to everybody. They're an obstruction to the freedom of people to move around. They're part of the Agenda 2030 initiative to keep us all penned in. We object to all these things very strongly. Thank you.
Well, I have a solution for everyone. I think as an equestrian woman myself, I think we should get back on horses and ride through Wimbledon for free. That would solve everyone's problems. But no, really, as a mother, as I've said a few times, a single mother, so I do all the school drop-offs with my friend who's down the back there. We're always late and we're pulling up to school very late. So we do agree, well I agree, that there should be safety in place for children going to schools, but parents do also need to be able to park, and because of all the parking restrictions and ticket wardens and all this stuff that the council has in place, it's very hard to drop your child to school if on a rainy day that you can't walk, or London is too dangerous at the moment to cycle to school for me and my son, so I don't feel safe and there isn't enough cycle lanes in place.
Thank you.
So I'm not a triathlete, so I'm not going to be taking up and racing you up the hill. I do cycle, I should admit I am not a driver, because I grew up around here, so did my husband, neither of us ever learned to drive, because we're blessed with incredible public transport. So walking is really important to me, public transport is really important to me, being able to be incredibly lazy and get from my home a mile away to here in 5 minutes on the bike rather than 20 minutes walking is important to me. I'm deputy with the council. I've been working with the Merton Residents Active Transport Group. I'd love us to do more. We've been putting new cycle lanes in my ward, in Cloud Lane, where we've got new buildings going up, because there's that then links up with the Wandle Trail. If we have a Labour government and we have to work with our councils, then we can really push this nationally. I also live in an area of low traffic neighbourhoods. They've been there for 30 years. Just the other day I door knocked someone there who happened to work for the Mail. And I said, well, what do you think of the LTNs? He said, I absolutely love them. And when I sit in the office at the Mail and everyone's going, oh, LTNs, they're the curse of the devil, I just have to kind of sit there and smirk. Because people who live in them love them. And because I live in an area of LTNs and an area of 20 miles per hour zones, the minute my daughter was in year 5 and her school allowed her to, I was completely happy letting her walk to primary school. Isn't that independence amazing? Isn't that what we should be encouraging in our children? So I will, if I'm your MP, be fighting for very much more active travel, both in our area, across London and across England.
Thank you.
First of all, the numbers. So the Green Party's Costed Manifesto sets out a £19 billion allocation to be invested in public transport and active transport. So that's 2.5 billion, which is going on new cycling and walking infrastructure. I mean, one of the things that's annoying with the bike is you're sort of nice, safely cycling along a cycle path, and then all of a sudden you get thrown out into the traffic, and then back onto the cycleway, back into the traffic, and then maybe on the pavement, and plough a few people down. Like, it's not joined up. We need to sort of plan this a lot better. I think planning is absolutely crucial. I mean, in my day job, I design projects, and one of the most important parts of designing a project is the consultation with the people, and I absolutely recognise that it's really difficult for parents sort of dealing with these school drop-offs and for all sorts of other reasons that people may have. So we don't want to say no cars, but we do support Active Transport England's ambition of 50% of journeys to be made via active means. And I'm trying one more thing, but probably have to end here. The idea generally is to just lower the number of the cars on the road, and that will make it safer for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm a keen cyclist. When I was commuting to London, I'd cycle about 5,000 miles a year. So all for active transport. What I do know is lack of joined up thinking, as the point was made earlier. Cycle lanes appear and disappear. They can't be slapped down because it's a good idea with this budget to spend. Things to be carefully planned out. That's what I think we need to do. I do have objections to things such as school streets. All it does is push the problem of people parking a bit further away. And again, you know, I live on a road that was one school street's road away. As a result, everyone else parks outside my house or the roads next to school. So there's a lack of joined up thinking. This whole thing needs to be agreed. What I would say is things like ULEZ is a cash grab. I bought a diesel car because the government told me I needed a diesel car, it's good for the environment, and then they changed their minds a couple of years later and forced me to trade it in. So every day, hard-working people who are tradesmen, who are moving in between the zones, have to pay a tax, and it's regressive tax, and it's something that reform would stop. Thank you.
candidate, again, I would be very happy to represent you as people, find out what you want. But may I also remind you that though we do all we can to make our streets and roads safe, we are still killing 844 children in this constituency.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, the second question in this category is, apart from the development of the All England Club, what do you think is Wimbledon's biggest challenge and what will you want to do about it? And I'm going to Danielle first for that one, please.
Homes. That's our biggest challenge. The biggest challenge for our next generation is to be able to afford their own home. And people want to grow up in the place that they were born with their parents. This is a big challenge. The Conservative government have delivered over 2.5 million homes since 2010, ensuring more people can own their own home. But this is a big challenge. Again, we were talking about balancing. This is what politics is all about, the art of the possible. How do we reconcile preserving our green spaces with building more homes? This is something we have to do together. So I believe we should not be building on over metropolitan land. There are areas like Morden that can be developed and unfortunately haven't been consistently for quite some time, and that's with the local council. But this is, homes is something that we need to be focusing on.
Thank you.
So in terms of the biggest challenge, I actually agree with my colleague. Housing, homes with the future is our biggest challenge. And as a council, we are, I'm not being loud enough. Housing is our biggest challenge. And as a council, I'm really proud to be part of the leadership team which is delivering the first council homes in a generation. And we're working with the housing associations in our area to make sure that we're regenerating and building new social homes, but also new private rented homes. I'm born in this area. I'm choosing to live here, which means I'm choosing to privately rent, because I wouldn't want to be able to buy a house here. That's fine for me, but as a local councillor, I speak to many people in utterly desperate circumstances, living with 4 children in 1-bedroom flats, or in private rentals where the rent is going up by £500 a year. We have to sort this out. So the Labour government coming in will build 1.5 million homes across the country, and we're going to have to make some difficult decisions to do so. We're going to have to look at which bits of the green belt are not really green belt and actually need development, and we're going to have to look at what we do with the private rental sector to regulate that better as well. So this is absolutely top priority for me.
Thank you, Eleanor. Okay, over to Michael, please.
Oops.
Well, the problem with affordability of property for the next generation is a national thing, not necessarily a local thing. And although it's a big concern for the problem for Wimbledon, I think, is to have increased footfall in the high street and a safe environment where people can shop and have entertainment, because there's a lot of talk of increased trouble, increased street violence in Wimbledon, and I think that is probably the big problem that needs addressing.
Thank you. And Ben?
Yeah, so the problem that we have here is that we want to have more homes, but also we want to maintain green spaces, so a bit of a conundrum. Perhaps the issue here is we need to turn it on its head. It's a supply and demand issue. You know, we're saying that we need to have more supply because the demand's going up. If you start
controlling so that people have some security of tenure. And lastly, we need to do with planning, but planning is more complex and easy to solve in a way. Do you know there are 1 million homes with planning permission that haven't been built? We have to deal with land banking. We also have to make planning a more local decision. In Merton, we have one planning authority for the whole borough. In Kingston, we have local planning authorities, planning committees for each area. The community gets more involved, and yes, they build more social housing there because it's a community-led approach to planning issues. That's the way you do it.
There is no other local issue that results in and as many lives lost as abortion does. So I believe that abolishing abortion is our biggest challenge.
Thank you. To Ray.
I think the biggest challenge really depends on who you ask. For the 1,100 homeless people in Merton, I'm sure it's something to do with that. But I do think that there's a sort of a theme that emerges, a sort of rising inequality. And I've said this before, but the inequality is sort of social justice is absolutely tied to climate justice, and it will only get worse. So, I mean, when we look at the climate and nature emergency that we're facing, I mean, it's not to be alarmist, the word existential sort of comes to mind, and that is, in my view, what I would call a rather major challenge. What we do about that locally, we understand that our kind of contributions to the climate emergency particularly spans transport, the built environment and our energy consumptions. And the energy consumption and the built environment kind of coalesce quite nicely in Wimbledon in terms of something that we can do something about, which nicely also ties in with our inequality and our need for housing. And so that's, you know, I want to break this down into four things. It's we need to look at what we built, responding to the actual local need, where we built it, obviously not on the green belt, but how we can use space cleverly to sort of redevelop and use it more effectively. We need to absolutely bring in a whole life carbon assessment so we can actually understand the decisions that we're making. And then all new buildings should be built to passive house standard, because why should we build a building that will continue emitting carbon for the rest of its life when we actually already have the ability not to? So thank you.
Rachel.
I agree with everyone that housing is a huge issue. Nearly 700 children in Wimbledon area live in temporary accommodation, which is very shocking for such an affluent area, that there's huge discrepancy between the rich and the poor in this area, and it's just getting worse under the main parties' policies and governments. And as an independent woman who is a single mother, I've been on the housing list in Merton for over 7 years now. I get no help. I work 4 days a week, as I said, and my rent, private rent, has gone up over £500 in the last year. That I cannot afford to pay my bills or feed my child. I have to use Wimbledon Food Bank and Wimbledon Guild to support me, which are amazing charities. So there are huge issues around the area. Also, we should be bringing in rent caps for commercial buildings to give local businesses a chance to work.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, down to me. Sorry. Okay, so what we've got now is still under the local and general questions. So this is another one where I'm asking for one topic and a short explanation, if I can please. And this is, there are lots of opportunities to serve the national interest as an MP, as well as representing your constituencies. Example, joining parliamentary committees, asking questions in the House. Aside from representing Wimbledon, what would be your key topic if you were elected to serve in the House of Commons? And I've got Paul again first, which I think you went first last time, but that's my ordering, so apologies. Over to Paul.
I believe in the rule of law. Our justice system is in meltdown. Both our criminal justice and our civil justice system are in meltdown. The criminal justice system, our prisons are completely crammed. We are putting more people in prison, but criminality rates are going up. We need to address the whole issue of how we sentence offenders, what we do with them. We have more people going to prison in this country, and yet our crime rates are going up, unlike in the continent. So we have to reassess our approach to criminal justice. Likewise, our civil justice system, again, is too expensive for most people to even go to court when they have an issue. These things undermine the rule of law. You must have a properly functioning criminal justice system and civil justice system, and that will be my main task when I go to Parliament. Thank you.
Well, it's quite shocking that 30% of children live in poverty in this country, which is an absolute disgrace. I would be standing, as I said, for my son. Other issues nationally under the current government are that they want to bring in national service. There's absolutely no way in hell that my son is going to go in and fight war and look and kill other people. Especially what's going on at the moment in Palestine. That would be a big, huge issue that I would raise, and it's one of the main issues why I'm standing here today. 15,000 children have died in Gaza, while the world stands uneducated and not standing behind these poor people that are going through a genocide. Everyone is just oblivious to it or not looking at it from this point of view. Current governments are making money from this war, and I just completely disagree with it. Everyone should be as one. Everyone should have peace and harmony for ourselves and for our children and for everyone in the world.
Thank you very much. So remember that phrase, that you all have a lot of experts. I very much haven't, and I think that people should use their expertise. So if I am elected to serve, the three areas where I've got strong professional expertise in housing that we've just been talking about, and I trustee of a homeless charity and have been for 15 years, and education, where I worked professionally for over a decade, and local government. I'll talk about education because that's what I absolutely love. I'm really passionate about helping, being aspirational for all children to achieve the best they can. Whether they're from poor backgrounds, whether they've got additional needs, whether they're new to this country, we should be helping them all. From early years through to those who are in care. There are evidence-based ways of doing this. I spent a decade working at a leading education charity, funding huge trials, giving out millions of pounds to find the best ways. And I'm really delighted to say that what Labour wants to do is evidence-based. So putting breakfast clubs in schools will raise attainment. Putting more early years language support in will help those children to develop their skills. Putting more childcare in will help outcomes. So education will be my absolute passion. That's what I'll be fighting for.
Thank you very much.
If I were to be elected to be your MP, I would agitate to abolish the Climate Change Act. There is no climate crisis. It's a complete fraud. And we spend so much money and time trying to pretend that there is. And that's what I would do. Thank you.
Again, like Helen, I'd like to bring some of the skills that I've learned. I've been working in IT and online for over 30 years. And as a result, it's the future for our company and our children. We need to make sure that schools are providing lessons and training for programming, as well as the other skills that go around, such as video editing, understanding marketing, AI, and all these important things that are going to turn this country into an IT powerhouse moving forwards. Money's being spent, but it's being spent poorly. And I've seen the state of the IT lessons at my children's schools, and they're wanting. As a company that provides placements, as well as providing summer schools for students, it's so valuable. It's something that we really need to make sure that youth don't get access to.
It's nice to see many of us agree that we should be bringing our own personal skills to Parliament, should we have the opportunity. So I suppose for me that's carbon and carbon auditing, and also the fact that I run a small charity working on the climate frontier, which is countries in the world which are affected by climate change today. So facing kind of huge numbers of increasing natural disasters, rising sea levels, so the evidence that climate change is happening currently. We don't need to go overseas to see that that's the case. Climate change is costing the economy, and it will cost more in the future. There's so many problems going on, and as a sort of professional project designer, it's a sort of art in many ways to design projects that sort of optimise multiple outcomes. to do more with less. And so that's the sort of strategy I would want to take, where we can look at these really positive solutions. I mean, one, for example, would be like insulating homes. Our insulation plan, if we have insulated everybody's homes, then it will immediately drive down energy costs. It raises people out of fuel poverty, it lowers avoidable deaths from cold homes in the winter. It's one of these examples with innumerable positive benefits, not just for climate. It doesn't matter what you think about climate, but you will enjoy the fact that your bills are lower and that your grandparents are in warm homes. And so that's the sort of a politician I would strive to be. Thank you.
If I had the privilege to be your MP, my focus would absolutely be on education. Education is the one true lever of social mobility upon which so many other outcomes depend. I'm very proud of the Conservative record in education. We have 27,000 extra teachers since 2010, and we've provided a lot more training, funding to the highest level ever in real terms. And we now have, and the proof of the pudding is in eating, we now have some of the best readers in the world. We've gone right up through the PISA rankings, which we should all be proud of. What I'm concerned about is Labour imposing 20% VAT on independent schools. This is a tax on education, it's a tax on parental choice, it's a tax on aspiration. This will increase state school class sizes, it will risk teachers' jobs, it will diminish opportunities for SEND children. And as a mother of 2 dyslexic boys, provisions for special education needs is of my highest priority.
So if you were to make me your MP, with 250,000 babies being killed by abortion every year, my focus remains the same: to protect babies' right to life under law, support women in challenging pregnancies through redirecting funds, and to seek reparations for women harmed by the abortion industry. Until we start protecting babies in the womb, our country really has no future.
Thank you, Anne, for those answers. Now, we're now moving to the economy, so we are getting through. We've got the economy, education and foreign policy to cover in 25 minutes. I think we might just do it. So on the economy, we had 7 questions, and the question that is being posed is: the cost of living crisis has been a huge issue for the country, covering areas such as food poverty, cost of energy and debt, and obviously housing there as well, rising housing costs. What would you prioritise when representing your constituents? And I'm going to go to Eleanor first for that one, please.
Thank you very much. It's taken a while for us to get to what is the number one issue on the doorstep. When we go to people, we say, what is it you're worried about? They straight away say, well, where to start? It's got to be the economy, it's got to be cost of living. So we have to stabilise and grow our economy. People need their prices getting under control. We're asking which aspect of cost of living in particular. We've talked about some of them already, we've talked about housing. Generally prices are rising, energy prices are rising. We need to set great British energy so that we can reach net zero as early as possible, become a world energy superpower, and so that we can reduce the cost of people's bills and reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We haven't talked yet about childcare costs. Childcare costs are abominably high. They're often higher than private school fees, essentially. One of Labour's policies will be to, where we have classrooms in state schools that are freeing up because there's a declining pupil population at the moment, because people aren't having babies. Why do you have a baby when the economy's a mess and you don't know if you're going to be able to afford them? And because people are leaving London because of the housing crisis, we will start to put in additional nurseries and childcare places in those primary schools to offer parents greater choice and lower childcare costs.
So Reform has very clear policies on this. The first thing is we're going to raise the income tax limit to £20,000. This means that we'll be taking the tax burden of the lowest paid and freeing up to spend money on what they see fit. I have friends of mine who are, they're single mothers, they're trapped in the loop of only being able to do 60 hours work a week, and it just means it's keeping them poor and their children poor. We would cut the energy tax, your gas bill, 33% of that is going on subsidies onto sustainable energy. It's unsustainable because you're paying a tax to look after it. Net zero is costing everyone in the country £30 billion a year, and that's a Conservative estimate. The other thing we do is we cut stamp duty, which is a tax on money that would have been taxed on, introduced in 1696 for a war against France. It's supposed to last 4 years. Clearly that carried on. It's a ratchet effect. The government has all these great ideas of how they're going to make life better, how they're going to help you. There's only one thing they need, they just need a bit more money. So Reform is committed to putting money back in your pocket and keeping you all richer. Thank you.
A huge part of the cost of living crisis and rising inflation is the base cost of energy. So it's obviously still tied to many of our geopolitical situations happening at the moment. And with rising energy costs come rising prices. I mean, not only do we have our domestic bills rising, but the business costs are rising. Hospitals pay for energy, so hospital costs are rising, so the budget for the NHS rises. There's a thing there, everything has to pay more for energy. And so, this has got another repercussion as well, because our energy is kind of uniquely tied to our carbon emissions. And so it's a real obvious choice that this is a priority. So a few sort of strategic approaches here. So first of all, if we can use less energy, and that's not by cutting back or making compromises, but by insulating our homes and ensuring that all new buildings are keeping that energy in much more effectively. Then we also need a sustainable, long-term domestic energy production. As technologies switch over to electricity, we're going to need a lot more electricity, so we need much more renewables, whether that's wind, solar. Somebody was talking to me the other day about community schemes for rooftop solar, and then there's some other things. Thanks a lot.
We have a cost of living crisis, crumbling public service infrastructure, tax levels at record high, and we need to do something about it. The only way to address this is to grow the economy. The way to grow the economy is to re-engage with Europe. Brexit was a disaster, but that's happened. Only the Lib Dems have a plan, a four-stage plan, to rejoin the single market and one day, not tomorrow, join the EU again. We must start embracing the offers from Europe. Europe offered us a youth mobility scheme to allow our young people up to the age of 30 to spend up to 4 years travelling and working and studying in Europe. A reciprocal scheme. Labour and the Tories both rushed to say we don't want it. That's exactly the type of scheme we should be embracing. Tories tell you they've got Brexit done, Labour tell you they're going to make it work. We must re-engage with Europe. Thank you.
I'm sure I don't have to remind you that during COVID, the global economy shut down for 2 years. And this is something, we can all sit around and say we want to grow the economy, but we have to remember that there is a long-term implication to the global economy shutting down for 2 years. And then after that, we had the invasion of Ukraine. Now, when this general election was called, I was actually in Lviv, I was in Ukraine. I'd just driven an ambulance from a local charity, Medical Lifelines Ukraine, filled with tactical medicine. I drove an ambulance to Lviv. And what I realised was Ukraine is 3 days' drive away, 3 days' drive from lovely, peaceful Wimbledon. And with that invasion, of course, our energy prices went through the roof. And this has had terrible problems with the cost of living. Now, what do we need to do about that? The Conservatives have, I have to say, done a fantastic job with renewables and energy independence. We've gone from, at the beginning of the Tory season, we had only 7% of renewables providing our electricity source. Now it's 50%. This is not only bringing down the cost of energy, which is good for businesses and families, it's also giving us independence, which means energy independence, which means we won't be vulnerable to those global political shocks in the future.
So yes, the economy has taken a massive downturn in recent years, but what are we doing to invest in our future? Consider this: women in Scotland from low socioeconomic backgrounds are 4 times more likely to kill their baby by abortion than those who are not. Then consider that abortion has clear links to future health issues. Abortion promises to be a quick fix solution, but it is very short-sighted in reality. Not to mention the cost of failed abortions. How are we going to fix the economy? Is it possible that through abortion, we are killing our next generation of leaders, teachers, scientists, doctors, and economists? Our children are the best investment for the future.
The cost of living crisis in this country is affecting most people in the world, or in the country, sorry. As I said, I'm a single mum and I work 4 days a week for a US law firm, and I still struggle to pay my rent. I've had to use food banks, and a lot of my friends are in a similar situation. They're social workers, they're doctors, they're nurses, they're teachers. And I think it's unfair that, especially in Wimbledon, there are people that maybe can help them less fortunate in this community. And one of my ideas would to be have a community fund, where if you wished, you could put some money into the community fund to help the less fortunate and children in this community.
Well, the cost of living, energy is a big problem, and we need to reopen the coal fields and the oil fields. We have lovely energy providing resources under the ground, and we should be using them. As I say, climate change is a bogus fraud, and there will be no problem about using these resources cleanly. Student debt. Okay. Student debt is a problem that Amy mentions. The Heritage Party would abolish it. They would cancel all student debt. Another thing would be if we could militate for employers to pay decent wages to their employees. We need to reduce taxation also across the board for everybody, rich and poor. All these things would put money back into the economy, help to grow the economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, so we're on to education now, which we had 5 questions submitted. This one is a very straightforward question, and it is, what are the biggest education challenges for Wimbledon? And I'm going to go to Michael first on that one, if I may, please.
Well, I think the biggest challenge for Wimbledon, particularly, is because of the amount of private education that there is in this area. The big issue is the proposed VAT on school fees, and the Heritage Party would not be in favour of putting VAT on private education and school fees.
One of the biggest issues in the Wimbledon area is definitely with state-funded schools. They're not funded enough. My own son's school hasn't been funded for many years now, and I'm on the parents' committee, and we raise funds for the school. We do summer fairs, we take the kids to Wimbledon FC and to the parks. So it's definitely a huge issue. The other issue is teachers. I have a lot of friends that are teachers and ex-teachers who have left teaching, sadly because they could no longer afford to do the teaching, or they just mentally couldn't do it with the children. It was a really stressful job, there's no help, and I think definitely the state-funded schools need more funding, and that will keep our children off the streets as they grow older. And then the prison system as well, which will cost about 16,000 to 20,000 per inmate per year to keep in prison. If we start from the sources and educate the children better, then it would help a lot.
Thank you. Paul, please. Thanks.
SEND provision in Merton is not good enough. Many parents with children with issues with learning go out of the state system into private education. It's shocking the Labour Party wants to impose 20% VAT on such parents. This will not in any sense deal with the inequalities of the Eatons and the Winchesters of this world. It will simply harm local parents who are making huge sacrifices for their children. It's completely wrong. And Emily Thornbury gave it away the other day. She said, the Labour MP, she said, well, if class sizes go up, so what? It's not about levelling up, it's about levelling down. It's drag everyone down. It's a shocking policy that Labour can only do because we've left the EU, because it wouldn't have been possible under the EU rules. It's a shocking decision.
So I speak to state head teachers in our area regularly. We have some of the best schools in the country, but if you ask heads what the problems are facing them, it's the budget, it's the special educational needs provision and mental health support, it's the falling pupil numbers, and it's teacher recruitment. We have to address these. I'm aspirational for all of our children. For parents who send their children to state schools, which is the vast majority, and those send them to independent schools, I want the best for them all. We have to recognise that independent schools have been putting their fees up and up and up. Meanwhile, state schools have been facing more and more budget cuts. So I'm supporting Labour's policy to levy VAT on the fees. The schools do not have to pass that on. They can find ways to absorb it in the same way that head teachers in state schools have been finding ways to budget. And I have written to the head teachers of every single private school in this constituency, asking them to meet with me if I become the MP, to work together on how we implement it and how we work with the government to implement it. And I've already had several really positive replies. But we need that money to invest in mental health support for our schools, 6,500 new teachers, and supporting careers and education in schools as well.
I think we have to disaggregate a couple of those issues that I think were brought together and a little bit confusing. The fact of the matter is, in Wimbledon, we have fantastic schools. Since 2010 now, there's been a huge improvement with 100% of our schools rated Ofsted good or outstanding. The issue with that is a real concern for parents, both in the state and the private sector. Nationally, there's 7% of children that are educated in the private sector. Here in Wimbledon, it is far higher, it is 20%. That means it's going to disproportionately affect our community. Furthermore, we have several small specialist schools, and if only a couple of children drop out, they're talking about between 10 and 15%. Nobody knows. We have asked Merton Council what their contingency planning is, and we haven't received a response on that. But even with the smaller schools, with only a few children dropping out, that will have an effect on the whole school. And I should add, yes, Emily Thornbury has said that state school classes will become larger, and also, if one of the issues is a lack of teachers, this funding with the 20% VAT will fund 1/3 of a teacher per school across the country. It doesn't make economic sense or deliver a good education.
Education is important. The question remains, though, what is being taught? For too many third-party companies have been allowed to corrupt our children with false information about the world around them, rather than helping to equip them for reality and how to handle it. I do not have a full educational mandate, but I would be happy to work with government to ensure age-appropriate and accurate information is distributed that helps people understand the humanity and the value of unborn children.
So as a father of four, I have first-hand experience of this. I would say it's a lack of choice, which is the most important thing. I live up by Wimbledon Park. My youngest has to go to Waynes Park High School, which is 2 bus rides, and for the then 11-year-old it was unacceptable. When I complained to the council, I was fobbed off and told I had to put up there. So that was suboptimal, shall I say. With regards to things such as schools not paying on costs, I mean, I would say this would probably be a first since the invention of coinage 5,000 years ago. What will happen is the prices will be ramped up for middle-income families who want the best for their children, and it results in the classes being flooded with additional students that can't be paid for. And if you think that the classes are bad now, it will get worse under Labour's policies, which is short-sighted and short-termist. Thank you.
My partner is a teacher. I also spent many years as a tutor teaching. I'm not sure if any of my parents are here, but teaching the students across the borough. And to me, one of the single biggest issues that we face here in Wimbledon and more nationally is stress, the problem of stress. And a lot of the time we talk about the stress on our teenagers. We don't always think about the stress of teachers. But it's all joined up, and there's a few things that we would do. So we would abolish Ofsted and replace it with some, completely reformed alternative regulator. And we would introduce the idea that regulator actually looks at sort of the academy system, because the way academies work at the moment, it's very different from local authority schools, and there are rules that run to themselves which need to be looked at. We would bring counsellors into every school, for the good of all of the community, and we need to move away from our obsession with metrics and numbers and these high-stake testings in primary schools and in secondary schools. It's not fit for purpose. We need to reform this and look again at the sorts of syllabus and vocational training offering for our students that make them more prepared for the 21st century world that we're facing.
I'm just going to do one very last question and ask for just a yes or no answer, because we need to do the closing statements. So we're going global now, foreign policy. So the question is, given events in Ukraine, the Middle East and China, and indeed many other countries, have we entered a pre-war era in this country? And I'll just come down the line, yes or no, please.
I would say no more than usual. There's been conflicts across the globe ever since time's begun. Some years better than others. If you read Steven Pinker's Angels of a Better Nature, we live in the most peaceful time that we've ever known, but it could be more peaceful.
Yes, definitely, and that's why I'm standing here today. I want my son and all the children growing up not to remember the horrible wars that our elderly in society remember, coming from Republic of Ireland, my heritage as well. I want it to be not forgotten, but for a better and peaceful future for everybody.
I'd like to say no, probably should say yes, or maybe is a more optimistic answer. The insurance companies are predicting 1.8 billion climate refugees by 2050, and so that's another kind of contributor to this pre-war scenario. So yeah, we really need to actually work together to change that answer for all of us.
I believe that we are at war, but it hasn't been declared yet. It may be very soon. But we have to work very much for peace in all those three areas, in Gaza, in the Ukraine, and in Taiwan and China. The powers that be are gung-ho for war, and I don't say the Chinese or the Russians or the Palestinians. It's the people in the West who are gung-ho for war, and they've got to be reined in and held back quickly.
We're entering a very dangerous period. I think we're entering a 30s period where we have to stand up for what is right. Liberal values are under threat across the globe. With Putin one side and the probability, I fear, of Trump on the other. We need to work together with our liberal partners. That's why, of course, working with our European neighbours is so critical to stand up to the dangerous demagogic forces in China, in Russia, and I fear under Trump in America.
Yes, we have war in North mainland Europe. We have tens of thousands of people dying in the Middle East. There are conflicts ongoing in Sudan, discrimination of people in Uyghur. I can name countless more. This is a really scary time. So if we have a strong Labour government, we will be pushing to be a strong voice for the recognition of and respect of international law. We will be working to improve and to develop closer relationships with Europe so that we can be a voice for peace in what is a terrifying, scary time indeed.
When I was in Ukraine, 5 weeks ago, I met the local MP for Lviv. She wasn't a big Zelensky character in fatigues. She was a local mum who said before the invasion she lived very normally like everybody else. And when I asked her about democracy, she said, we are here on the forefront of democracy, fighting for freedom, not just for our own country, but for the whole of Europe, and in fact, Western democracy. So yes, this is a huge concern and challenge. There is an axis change of power between Western democracy and authoritarianism. And it's something that we have to guard against, which is why we are increasing our defence spending as a Conservative Party. And it's something that I think we all have to consider very gravely.
So the Bible tells us that there will always be war, and there will always be rumours of wars. And war is a terrible thing. And I wonder if you know, though, that the death toll from abortion far surpasses that of all recorded wars, the Holocaust, and all genocides combined.
That was always going to be difficult, wasn't it? But, you know, I don't want us to finish on a sombre note. My time is up. So I'm going to turn to the candidates for very positive statements as their closing statements. So you've got 1 minute each, and again, it's in a completely random order. So over to Labour and Ellen.
So I hope what you've heard from me tonight is I'm here to offer hope and to offer Wimbledon change. Change from the Conservative chaos and to secure the Labour government to deliver the economic stability that we all need, to rebuild the NHS that we love, and to give our children the best start in life. I'm standing on the record of securing huge investment into our town centres, of stopping children going hungry during the pandemic, of expanding our CCTV network here in Merton to tackle antisocial behaviour and crime, and helping our council to be one of the best in the country for tackling the climate crisis. I'm standing with a promise to work hard here for you every single day, and I'll be your voice inside the Labour government, a voice standing up for Wimbledon. This election was a huge moment. This was a moment like 1997, where we had the chance to choose change. And in that election, Wimbledon chose a Labour MP, and now you have the chance to do so again. So if you want an end to Conservative chaos, vote Labour. If you want change, vote Labour. If you want Labour, vote Labour. Thank you.
If you want to have a peaceful and optimistic period ahead of us, I ask you to vote for the Heritage Party. As I say, we are a Christian party. We need to inject the spirit of Christianity into politics and the general public sphere. We do that, we behave well to each other, then we can go forward and have a peaceful and re-energized nation. That's why I would say vote for the Heritage Party.
As a businesswoman, a former athlete, a mother, a wife, and a community champion, I offer you an experienced, safe pair of hands in turbulent times. On the 4th of July, we each have one vote to choose who will best represent you, your family, your community, your values, your aspiration. One vote to decide which values and style of politics you'll be proud to stand behind. If elected, I will look after our high streets with the experience of a businesswoman. I will conserve our green spaces and hold Merton Council to account with its inappropriate development with the relentless determination of an athlete. I'll fight to protect our outstanding schools from Labour's wrecking ball as a mother who holds our national standards of education so dear. And I'll expand our local culture of sport and healthy lifestyles for our young and our young at heart. As a Conservative, I can serve. I take the custodianship of Wimbledon very seriously, and I hope you'll trust me with your vote.
As a last-minute runner, the black horse along here, if you want and are sick of all the parties fighting against each other like I am, that's why I'm standing as an independent woman. If you want more women in politics to have a nurturing way, and as we can see, most of the wars going on in the world have been created by men and power, and we want to have a change and have a safe and peaceful future for our children, then if you would like to vote for me, that would be great. If not, I'll do something else. If you see me on this street, which you probably have, or around the Irish Club, or around the gym around the corner, stop me and chat to me. I'm inclusive of everybody. As I said, my son is a mixed race boy. I'm against all forms of racism. I'm against all forms of anti-immigration and Brexit. So I want a better future for everybody and the elderly in our society, and mental health and disabilities, and the list goes on. So.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you. There's no such things as solutions, there's only trade-offs. And what I'm hearing from here is lots of solutions, and I'd like to flip it on its head. So we're saying the services are overstretched. There's not enough houses, there's not enough green spaces, not enough doctors, not enough dentists. Well, this is a supply and demand issue. We've got more demands than we can supply. And if we think maybe we've got people promising things that they need money for, maybe we should flip on its head. Maybe the answer is not more government, but less government. Maybe we should take control away from the centralised powers and put them into the hands of the people on the street. If you can choose where to, thank you. If you can choose where to spend your money, you know it much better than the government. Yeah? A government takes your money and spends it with no recourse, with nobody complaining or moaning. And you get a chance to vote about every 5 years. I would say that we've suffered under the Conservatives and the Labour. We've seen immigration increase from 1997 under Tony Blair and 2010 under David Cameron. And what's happened is that because it's not been controlled or managed, it means we're now in the state we are. If we can control immigration, we can then start to manage the whole process of making the country better for everybody here, native born or immigrants alike. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Ask yourself, am I about to vote for a party or candidate who supports the intentional killing of 250,000 babies a year? Human rights begin when human life begins, at fertilisation. Consider this, abortion is the greatest intentional mass killing ever. Worldwide, the death toll from abortion far surpasses that of all recorded wars, the Holocaust and all genocides combined. The Bible commands us, rescue those being led away to death, hold back those staggering towards slaughter. If you say, but we knew nothing about this, does not he who weighs the heart perceive it? Does not he who guards your life know it? Constituents, we are on the right side of history to know what we should do.
Your next MP will either be me or another Conservative. You know how close that was last time? Every opinion poll, every technical voting site makes it clear I'm the person best placed to beat the Tories here in Wimbledon. Yes, Labour will probably be the biggest party nationally. Who do you want holding them to account? Me, with my history of fighting a Labour mayor and forcing him to keep Wimbledon Police Station open, forcing a Labour council to keep the Eastway Dementia Centre open, fighting with the Wimbledon Park groups in 2021 to force a Labour council to enforce the covenants, or Danielle, the new Tory MP, who will be fighting with the other MPs as they already are in what will happen after their heavy defeat. You know I can fight for you, you know I will. I've done it for 8 years, long before I became a councillor. I fought for this area and I would carry on fighting for you. I'll be there for you, so please be there for me on July the 4th. Thank you.
The Green Party is the party of people and planet. We recognise there are no people without planet. Climate injustice is social injustice. We solve them both together or we solve neither. We don't inherit the world from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. As a parent to a young child, I have to think about her. And this is why I feel the great imperative to stand for the Greens. There's no time to waste. The Green Party is the only party that will put the climate emergency first, that is free to advocate for constituents rather than bend to a party whip. We are the only party that have listened to what people want and need and is offering a bold and costed plan to get us there. A Green vote is not a wasted vote. On the contrary, it's a vote for good ideas, the right ideas to navigate the climate emergency. It's a vote that puts the needs of our children above the interests of big business, a vote that gets policies noticed and emulated. And in particular, it's a vote that gets Greens funded, meaning more Greens standing in more elections and ultimately more Greens at the decision-making table. I say again, it is not a wasted vote. It is a vote to future-proof the world for our children. Now is the time to vote for what you believe in. If not now, then when?
I'd like to thank the audience for the respect that you've shown this evening for such a broad range of issues that we've covered here. So a really big thank you for that and also for submitting your questions. I'd like to thank our panel. They did keep to time, so we got through all the questions, which I didn't think that we would. So thank you to the panel. Obviously, we'd like to give them our best wishes for the 4th of July. I hope that everyone here is going to vote. I'm sure you are, but we all know we must use our vote. This event has been done, as you know, a partnership between Wimbledon Community Association and Sustainable Merton, and I'd like to ask David to join me here. Are you going to say a few words?
I was just going to thank you.
Oh, me? Oh, okay.
To check in with our Wimbledon and indeed with Sustainable Merton for future things that we're doing. Thank you so much for coming tonight and in large numbers. As I said, there will be a recording of this at some point in the future, in the near future, on our website links somewhere. So thank you for coming again and take care of your home.